Hey everybody, this is your boy John. On today's episode of Geeks From The Multiverse podcast, we're going to be talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we're going to be talking about the history of it, as well as all the basically media content that they've had and all the different shit that, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is actually known for. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is your boy John again, and with me as always is my buddy boy Matt.
What's up? Also known as Mr. Grumpy Beard.
Mr. Grumpy Beard. Anyways, no, I know I got to get a catchy name. I know I've been saying that for a little bit. I'm working on it. Okay, we're gonna get there at some point. But anyways, not the point. So Matt, before we go on, because I know we got a couple of things we want to talk about real quick. Before we go on to like the history of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the content and all that stuff. I know we do a little shout out to YouTube again, so I'll let you take that piece real quick.
Yeah, I mean, we're still posting. I mean, our episodes post kind of automatically to our YouTube channel. We do go in there, Monday. I kind of was late with it this past week, but we do kind of go in and replace the thumbnail image and, some of the information, whatever. But our YouTube channel still has our podcast. We're posting there every week. We don't have really any live content or anything of that nature yet. But if you're, listening on Spotify, that's great. If you're looking for another platform, definitely like YouTube is the platform to go to because it's just that readily available. You know what I mean?
It's free too, so it's not like you're paying for it. I mean, granted, yes, you can do a premium version of it, but like realistically, it's free. Anyone can go on YouTube and no problem with that. And not only that, like even just like YouTube. I mean, we're talking about the other ones that we've talked about, like the Apple, like Apple Music or really Apple Podcast.
Good Pods is actually a newer one that we're on now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And Good Pods has kind of their own site, which is free, but it allows Good Pods is kind of a cool site because it allows you to pick like your kind of top like 5 favorites.
Oh,
there's kind of like a social media portion of Good Pods.
I had no idea,
but it's actually a pretty decent. It's actually a pretty decent site. But yeah, you can check it out there. Or, if you're just that lazy about it, you can go to our website and you can actually listen to them right there on the website. You don't even need like anything.
Free.
Right. You don't even need like a Spotify account or a YouTube account. Like you don't need nothing. You just go to the website and you can listen to them right there.
Yeah. And, real quick, guys, too. So I know holidays are going to be coming up here shortly. So, of course, like Halloween, I mean, granted, I'm not going to say Thanksgiving here. Maybe one day we'll come up with some Thanksgiving things, but like at least Halloween and like Christmas wise, for our like merch store and stuff. I know we're trying to like, create new ideas, like we've said in the past, like, T-shirts, all that different kinds of stuff. So like if there's things that you want to see, moving forward, let us know because, I know Matt's a wizard at, trying to get,
and I mean, we'll put all of our, we had some Christmas merch that we did last year. So we'll probably, put that back up on the store, but we'll add some new shirts. We got some ideas, kicking around. So we'll put some new shirts, but definitely check that out. Cause I gotta admit, and I'm going to say this, John, but podcasting ain't free, bud.
Nope, it ain't. And I'm just going to say it. You're absolutely right.
It costs money to do what we do. I mean, between the equipment and Photoshop and the things that we really want to do and the areas that we want to bring this. I mean, we want to end up eventually doing video podcasts.
Would that cost money?
But it costs money to get the gear. I mean, we can't just use our phone and have this like really crappy video quality. Like we need good quality equipment if we want to put a good quality product out there. We can't just, record in a basement and hope that we're not going to get some Al Qaeda video. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those, like, we need good quality equipment, and I'm not trying to like, hey, give us all your money. I'm not trying to bully you guys into giving me your lunch monies, but it's just at the end of the day, like what we do costs money, and our merch store is a small way to, you get something in return. It's not just you giving us money, but you get some really cool merch that nobody else has.
Well, and not only just even the money piece to this, it's really just spreading the word, right? So the more people that we have and the more listeners, the more things like that, that helps us grow. So then again, potentially that can grow in time. So again, spreading that word does help. It's not just about like what he's saying about the merch store, but like, giving it to other people and be like, hey, this is, you like some dudes talking on a mic, talking about geeky stuff. Like that's what we're doing.
We all know a geek in our life, if not more than one. And it's just one of those things that I haven't counted recently, but I think at the end of the year, we had something like almost 40 different topics that we talked about. And now, it must be up to like at least 60.
Yeah. And
it has to be a lot. And, we try to make everything, kind of universal, not just like comic books or movies or TV shows or whatever. We try to make it more universal. I don't want to talk about Pokemon or Harry Potter, but
at some point you might have to talk about Pokemon.
I might have to do that, and I'm not going to enjoy it, and I'm going to, but you know what? We're going to do it.
We are going to do it because that is what the podcast is about, is just exploring different topics that maybe both of us don't really know, and maybe we bring in somebody else. And so again, having these ideas and, sharing that with us too.
We are talking about doing a true crime episode, which is, hopefully we can schedule maybe in November. Who knows?
Yeah, and actually, I'll have to talk to you on the side because there might be some other ideas about that true crime that I was just thinking about earlier. But anyways, one other thing that, we're going to mention real quick is, we were just talking actually right before the podcast. We were just kind of like discussing it a little bit. So there was a quite interesting topic about the whole Disney, kind of debate going on where, when you look at a lot of the TV shows like Star Wars that's making and Marvel and stuff like that. So we both know we've talked about like the Acolyte show a little bit. And we've also talked about, some of the shows that Marvel has been doing I would say in the least, like, I don't know, last year or so. And so recently, Acolyte, as, some people are like, oh, it's great. No, okay. We've had this debate and we've talked about it. But the thing is recently Marvel has just done a show, which this show technically should have came out a long time ago because it was based off of WandaVision.
Right.
But it's actually Agatha
all along.
All along, right. So the thing is about this show right now is that the viewership is actually lower than Acolyte. And so they're having a debate where, which one.
Sorry about that.
Oh, great. Now we have to stop what we're doing.
No, keep going.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad. Anyways.
I just had to open this can up, you know what I mean?
Can of whoop ass, actually. No.
Whoop ass on you.
So, like, the thing about the viewership is that, Acolyte already was doing so low enough that, people were like, I don't know if it's even worth my fucking time. And it's like, right, I understand. Look, we already know that. But the thing is about Agatha is that this is actually lower than Acolyte. And it's actually becoming concerning, at least with, I know, Marvel fans as well as Star Wars fans, really the Disney fans in general, saying that, hey, we love these brands because you guys have done so well in the past. But here's our issue now is now you're talking about, and this is where Matt and I have talked about it multiple times, about this DEI, stuff that they've been doing, as well as some of the, I guess, ideas that they wanted to do with these shows and just kind of like make a story and see how well it sticks. It's like, it's not really working the way it is.
And I think, with the Acolyte and everything, like, I think it's put so much like a bad taste in fans' mouths, like where you have a movie as great as Deadpool and Wolverine was, which I believe comes out on the 1st on streaming, by the way.
Oh, I can't wait.
But you have a movie like that comes out and fans are like, oh, it's going to be great. And this guys, you can look this up. It's not new information, but this is exactly what Marvel/Disney has done since they've taken over Marvel. Is you have this like one or two great projects, and then following those projects, you have these really terrible projects that don't really go anywhere. And then they have a really good one that's like, hey, this is like, it's entertainment, like it's great, this is awesome, fans love it. And then it's followed by a few other nuggets that are just like fans don't love, like the Marvels.
That was a pile of shit.
The fucking Eternals.
Like, that was also a pile of shit. I can add piles of shit here, but
you have this stuff, and like when we talk about the Acolyte, and I know that's Star Wars and not Marvel, but it started with like an 11.8 or something like that viewership rating when the very first day it debuted. Agatha had a 9.3. And now I think it's maybe like, I haven't seen it and I'm not going to watch it, to be honest. But I think right now, like the article that I read was it actually has less ratings at this point in the season than the Acolyte had at this point in the season.
So,
which should tell you something because the Acolyte's been already canceled.
Right. So here's the best part is that I told Matt that if he, because I forgot that Agatha, I thought it was coming out here shortly. I didn't realize it was already out. So I told Matt that if he already watched the Acolyte all the way through, I'm going to take one for the team and watch Agatha. So that way I can kind of get a better idea. This is just more of a topic that I think Matt and I wanted to kind of discuss because I feel like, especially in the world of geek culture, like, we're trying to like also bring in new ideas and like kind of get more trendy with topics and stuff. So, we're possibly from here on forward, we might just start bringing up stuff like this. So if we have more information about maybe like this or just other things that we're talking about, maybe we'll do that real quick in a quick little segment. And then, we can bring it up the next time as well. Right, just kind of bring it forward. But anyways, no, I mean, I agree that yes, I'll let you know when I watch it and I'll let you know my opinions on what it is.
After seeing some of the interviews and, it's the same thing with the Acolyte. Like it's the interviews are actually exactly almost the same as what they did with the people that were in the Acolyte, talking about like how this is the gayest show ever. And, one of the main actresses, it's not the woman who plays Agatha. She plays another character, and I don't know where she comes in the series or how it's going to end because I really don't give two shits. But,
well, fair enough, I guess.
Apparently, like when she was interviewed, she was like, do you think that this is like the gayest Marvel, project that you've done? And I don't think she's done any other projects with Marvel, but she basically was like, well, yeah, that's the reason I signed on to do this show. And I'm, you're sitting there listening to it and you're like, really? That's this is the reason you signed on to do this show, not to be this character that you are or to give entertainment to the fans. You signed on to do a TV show to play a character because it's the gayest project that Marvel has ever done. And that's the information that tells me exactly what I want to know in less than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It just tells me that I'm not interested. Now, when Ryan Reynolds came forth and said, this movie is for the fans, all I want to do is entertain the fans, that tells me exactly what I want to know. That it's not based on anything else, but providing what the fans want to see.
Yeah. And so actually, just a little side topic, but basically on the same one about Agatha. So I did look it up. So yes, I didn't know that it came out on September 18th. I see that. But what I find interesting is they call it a mini-series. You know what I mean? So like when you have a mini-series, I'm thinking like a few episodes. They're actually doing what seems like, let's see, like 8. So was that?
That's not a mini-series.
That's not really, show. But that's what I'm saying.
That's a full show.
Actually, it's 9 episodes. My apologies. So that is technically a full season. So why would you call it a miniseries?
That's a full show.
A miniseries is like 3 or 4 pushing it. I would say like a few episodes, if that. Like that's a miniseries.
Yeah. And I get it. I know Agatha is a character in the comic books, and I get the reason you would do a TV show. Like I understand the entertainment value in it, but Disney does not do witches well. Like I don't know what it is with Disney and witches, but they all have to be like this one image of like, and it's not what I imagine. And maybe it's old school thinking, John.
Well, let me know you're thinking.
Maybe I'm thinking of like when I'm like 10 years old and I think of a witch, I think Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? Like
that's really old school, man. I'm not talking.
I don't think.
What about
lesbian witch covens?
Well, hold on. So I think it was back in the 90s. It was there was a movie. It was like the Ronald Dahl. It was like a witch. I remember the book, but basically it was about a bunch of witches. They like every year would meet up at this conference and they made a movie about it. And they would like, they were like these really, pretty looking women, but then like they took their mask off.
Yeah.
That's a witch to me. Like if I'm looking at that, like that ugly kind of like weird looking
I know
shit,
the movie that you're talking about.
That's what I think of a witch.
That movie scared the shit out of me, by the way. And because
really? Wait, that's one movie that scared the shit out of you?
Only because like the way that Angelica Houston was in that movie.
Yeah, that's true.
It was just the way that she acted, and like when everybody took off like their skin, basically, they were all like these weird creatures, and it was like, oh.
So hold on. So the fact that I just heard Matt said that he got scared the shit out of, that's crazy because my version of getting the scared shit
I mean, granted, when it came out, like I was younger, but it was like, I mean, it was one of those things like you're watching it and like the kids are getting turned into fucking mice and.
No. I understand what you're saying.
What the hell's going on?
I just thought it was funny when you said that because I'm like, this guy loves horror shit.
I can see where you're going with that. And yes, like I see the classic picture of what a witch is. And I see that picture of what a witch, but never in a million years would I have imagined, witches being. And we've gone way too far on this.
I know we have.
But never would I have, thought of witches being in some weird lesbian cult. It's just weird to me that you have to use like this is the gayest project I've ever been in, and it's great. This is why I signed on. Who gives a shit? It's a fucking Marvel comic book that you're talking about. Nobody cares whether it's gay or straight. Like, we just want good fucking characters and a good story. Well, and you can't give us that because you have to focus on the gay part of it.
Well, you know what's funny? This is just, I know it's kind of off topic, but it's, do you remember the movie Halloween Town?
Roughly.
Okay.
I've seen it maybe once.
Okay.
But.
Well, it was like, I think it was like late 90s. I think it was late 90s, if I can remember. Granted, it was about this little girl. Her basically finds out her grandmother lives in this town called Halloween Town, but she's a witch. And she, it's like this Disney-fied kind of way. I can see where, when we were talking about like the kind of that ugly list, or we're talking like Wizard of Oz, like that kind of style, or being like this, where it's like, you're right. It's this kind of like, needs to be beautiful, needs to be like, like, kind of weird in some ways, but like having like, you're looking at Wanda a little bit, like where, she goes kind of like a normal girl and all of a sudden like she just turns into this like freaked possessed, like has all this magical abilities and just fucking does whatever the fuck she wants kind of.
And I don't kind of
weird to me.
I don't have a problem with the darkness of it.
No,
it's not even the darkness of it. Like I don't think every witch has to be like charmed. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be like a teeny bopper. Like, hey, this is cute.
Or
like
Sabrina,
you're a witch. That's cute. No, I do think it can be dark, and I think witches can be dark. I just don't like how everything has to be freaking gay. Like, why does it have to even go that route?
So that's what I was about to say. Is like how like again, this is the culture, right? So you're looking at 80s, 90s, whatever. No, they weren't giving a shit about that. I mean, granted, a lot of times if they had a movie that it was about...
And like, most fans don't give two shits about it.
What I'm just saying now is like that is the forefront of what we're talking about now. It's like, there's no reason for the agenda. But yes, anyways, let's talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Go Ninja, Go.
So yeah, what I find interesting about the creation, and I'll go through the first, like I think like 3 or 4 points on this first part.
Well, definitely the second point, because that's a major point.
But the comic book was actually created by Kevin Eastman and Peter
Laird.
Yes. They met in Massachusetts. They began working on illustrations together.
But
in 1983, Peter moved in with Eastman.
Who lived in?
Hey, Peter. But they lived in Dover, New Hampshire, which is quite actually surprising.
Which, if I'm also not mistaken, you can, when I actually want to go visit it, I really think you and I should go visit it. There actually is there's a spot, I believe it's like a little monument that they show that says this is where the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was created. And it actually shows it there.
Cool. But, in November of that year, Eastman drew a masked turtle standing on its hind legs, armed with nunchucks, to basically make Peter laugh. And Peter then added the word Teenage Mutant to it, and then, the whole concept of how they created, the characters and the comic book and the story was that it actually parodied several like superhero comics of the time, like Teen Titans and the Uncanny X-Men. Daredevil was like a huge influence, and the more we kind of get into it, like the more like you'll kind of see where they went with the Daredevil kind of references. Yeah. But Daredevil was like a huge reference for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they also combined like the funny animals like Howard the Duck,
which is fucking weird to me because that is one character I never would have thought you'd want to put like in that same category. You know what I mean? I understand the quirkiness, the weirdness of like Howard the Duck.
I think the movie. If you take the movies out of it, I think the comic books were relatively different in nature. But yes,
no, right. Granted, I know that now moving forward, a lot of the comic books now are very dark. Like there's a lot of dark Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics now versus back then. Per se, because they were, the origins.
Yeah, but the comics are kind of dark, but if you look at the series, they're getting more kiddish.
Well, I thought, you're talking about the series.
Almost like when you see the original Teen Titans.
No,
and then you have Teen Titans Go, and you're like, what the fuck is this bullshit?
and you know what's funny is like that same concept is like, they actually parody that whole thing, and then like they show their like that version of themselves like, you're a fucking bitch, you fucking pussy, and it's like, oh shit, all right. But they joke around, but like I feel like that's what you could do here, like in this sense, especially with like you take some of like the older.
I like the more. I like the older series because they were more grounded and they felt more. Like
they had one. First of all, they had an iconic theme song for that matter. Like it was just perfect.
It's just seeing some of the newer series, they're just kind of weird to me, and the animation's weird. I don't know. I just don't like.
I will say if I'm going to go, well, I know we'll probably talk about it here shortly, but like I would say the only closest one, in my opinion, that I could say like the new or newer ones. Is they did one in like 2003 that I was watching a little while ago, but like that is the only version I would say that they done it really well. After that, it was like, yeah, he's talking about kiddish. I'm like, yeah, when we're talking about the new movie that came out, yeah, that was ridiculous in my opinion.
It's really crazy. But continuing on with the history, the two guys developed a whole concept into a comic book, and they actually considered giving the turtles Japanese names. But instead named them out, obviously, after Italian Renaissance artists Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, which, Peter actually had said, it felt quirky enough to fit the concept.
Which I think for their time, it did. It just kind of just worked. It was just kind of one of those things that, you never would have thought to do something like that. And granted, you could probably do a Japanese style of that if you wanted to do it in Japan, for example. But like, yeah. Here, it's like, no, I would say that's probably your best choice in that matter, moving forward. But like,
yeah, it is, when you look at the names, I think those work much better than having like weird Japanese names that
like Hiroshi
that kids can't really pronounce anyways.
Like, hey, what's your name? Hiroshi. Okay, what's your next? So we got Tamagotchi, Hiroshi. it doesn't have to do with the sheep.
I think that they wouldn't have just one name. They would have like like Haragoshi, like it would be.
Oh wow! Okay, talk about fucking racism. No,
it would be like one long freaking name. Like I think just the one singular like Michelangelo, Leonardo. Like it's easy to.
Well, it's easy to say it, and then just people got used to it, and especially. I feel like when you hear the theme song, granted, they don't, well, they do. They like Raphael and Michelangelo, and then it's like, it just fit well, you know what I mean? Because if you had like I just said, like Tamagotchi, Hiroshi, fucking whatever, it's just like,
Hiroshi,
Tamagotchi, it just, I don't know, it wouldn't flow well. But no, like, I think moving like to the next concept here, like they developed, that backstory referencing, further elements of like Daredevil. So in this case, like the turtles are altered by radioactive material, which that they call it the ooze, right? And then, and then there's Sensei Splinter, right? So again, yes, in Daredevil it's stick, right? So I understand the whole like little wordplay there, like stick, Splinter, like funny.
Like you
didn't think about it like that.
It is kind of funny actually,
because I'm thinking about it. But but I could see why they did that kind of way. Granted, the ooze thing. That was special. Because like now as you think about it, you're like, like what would happen if you did touch that ooze? Like if a human touched that. You know what I mean? Or like, but you don't
Well,
think about that.
actually, I mean, we'll actually get into that with one of the later characters.
Oh, okay, my bad.
One of the newer characters, because that actually happens to her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But yeah, initially, when we think of the turtles, like we think like Leo had the blue, Donatello was purple, Raphael was red, Michelangelo was orange, right? But initially, they all had red masks. They all had one color mask.
Yeah.
They were trained to use the different weapons. So each one, like Leo had the katanas, Donatello had the bow staff. So
Raphael had the size, and then Michelangelo had the nunchucks.
Yeah, so they all had their individual weapons, but they did not have individual color masks.
So, but it's funny though. Like once they had the colored mask, like so it's like you could hear them. Like granted, in the original like series, you could kind of hear. Like they're it's kind of like their personalities, right? So like, Raphael was always the hothead. Like now, granted, in the original like animated series, he really wasn't like that. I know in like later, he kind of was like, he was more angry. He was like, yeah, he's like the tough guy, right? And like Donatello was the smart one, basically.
Which in the newer movies, they made him like
kind of dumb,
extremely nerdy, because like they made him have like all these electronical things like on his glasses.
Well, and then I said, Leonardo was the leader, right? So he kind of had like a calm demeanor, like was had a good leadership style. And then Michelangelo was just like he was your dumbass. I'm sorry, he was the dude. Let's fucking party, dude. Let's go get some pizza, brother. So he sounded like that all the time, and it was just like. It was great, but he just was kind of like he had dumb luck. I feel like he had a lot of dumb luck on his side.
I mean, obviously he was good at being a ninja, but he obviously was more of like a party animal, and yeah. But you also have to kind of end this like little part here, like you have the Foot, which were basically a clan of evil ninjas. They became the Turtles' arch enemies. I mean, they were more henchmen to Shredder, obviously, but they actually satirized the Hand, who were actually kind of a mysterious and like deadly ninja clan that were in the Daredevil comics.
Well, because it's true. Yeah, I did think about that. Now that I see the references, you're right. I mean, they basically were like, hey, let's just
flip the Hand.
Script.
Now we have the Foot,
and now we have Splinter versus Stick.
Yeah.
And then you have ooze versus chemical.
Which is real. I mean, these guys had to be laughing their ass off.
Oh, they had to.
It's like, hey, this guy is, Daredevil Sensei is Stick. Why don't we just call this guy Splinter?
Well, I mean, I'm wondering if they instead of like, because like if they're from New England, so I'd be like, Splinter. Like
Splinter,
like
Splinter with an AH.
There you go, with an AH.
All right, so the characters, obviously, like we'll go through the Turtles. I'll take the first couple of them.
Oh, so you want me to get then never mind. Go ahead. Do
you want to do the first two?
No, it's fine. All right, that's fine. Go for it.
So Leonardo, obviously, is nicknamed Leo. He's the leader of the Ninja Turtles. He's obviously the most disciplined and the most skilled. His main priority is to help his brothers be the best ninjas they can, just because of his leadership, but he's also challenged with constant rebelliousness of not just Raphael, but I think obviously Michelangelo being the dumbass. Like, he has to keep him in line.
Donatello's the only one that he kind of just does his own thing.
He stays in his own lane, yes. Leonardo is an expert swordsman. He wields 2 katanas and wears an ocean blue mask.
Is it? I love how it's ocean blue. It's not just blue.
That's what it says, ocean blue. I mean, it could just be blue, but
I think it's just blue. I don't think it has to be ocean blue. But go ahead.
Donatello, nicknamed Donnie, is the smartest and gentlest of the turtles. I like how it says gentlest.
Like, I mean, because like he's not.
I mean, I think he is more passive because he's an intellectual, which is kind of like what I would view myself as. Like I would be more of an intellectual person than I would be more of a fighter.
Oh, great. So, okay, so you're saying you'd be Donnie. Now, who would I be, apparently? You're thinking you're fucking Raphael.
You'd be fucking Michelangelo.
Yeah, I'd be the dumbass. Yeah, right. He's like, son, dude. Yeah.
So, yeah, he's an intellectual, often attempts to reach his goals through science and technology rather through violence. So he would usually invent gadgets and vehicles, which he actually created, like the big turtle van that we've
that we all know, yes.
If you were an 80s, 90s kid, you've probably had the toy van, which I did.
Dude, I'm jealous.
It was awesome.
I'm sorry.
It was
I'm
awesome.
jealous.
It actually shot,
did it shoot like a rocket or something?
No, I think it shot...
it was pizza. It was I think it was pizza or something like that.
I think it was manhole covers.
Was it manhole covers? I thought it was pizza.
It could be pizza, but I thought it was manhole
both.
covers.
Maybe it could have been either one.
It could have been either one. But he's the most passive, I think, of the turtles. Leonardo's second in command, I think, because of his passiveness. Michelangelo's he's too out there, and Raphael is kind of like he's very angry. He's kind of like the more angry turtle, but
he's the lone wolf, plain and simple. But yeah.
So he's kind of, Donnie is always like one step ahead of the brothers, coming up with like solutions to problems that they just don't know the answer to. He studies the arts of bojitsu, which is, basically just a ninjutsu, like,
but with a bow.
With a bow, yeah.
Yeah.
He wears the purple mask and wields an oak bow.
Yes, he's the only one that technically is not, like, his weapon is not metal, plain and simple. Everyone else has some sort of metal.
Which is actually surprising.
It is surprising in that sense.
He doesn't, create a metal one that, like,
Yeah, I think it would be smart. But here's the issue, though, because I know that there's been multiple times in a lot of their adventures that their weapons kind of get, like, magnetized or they do something. It does something.
Well, I mean, you're facing a guy named Shredder who has, like...
we'll get into him.
And he has a wood...
but apparently it's strong, so maybe it's made out of...
I mean, I guess that's how you use it.
So, anyways, this is what I wanted to do first. Here, let me just pull this back up here. So, dude, this is Mikey here. No, I'm just kidding. No, so, anyways, yes, Michelangelo. I just wanted to do that like that. So, I'm just going to start with this. Yes, as you could tell, he speaks with a Southern California dialect. So, like when I said, "Yeah, saw, dude," tubular, like that's literally when I say your voice and stuff. He's one of the most prominent ones that you can definitely tell who he is without. If I only heard his voice, I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's Michelangelo. Like, but you know what I'm saying? Like everyone else is like, like Donnie had like a very like, oh, hey guys, it was like very quiet, like kind of doing his own thing. Raphael was like, he was just angry. He was like, yo, man. It was just, I don't know. He was just kind of like, it sounded like a burly guy. Like it was just like really angry all the time, really wanted to get in your face, wants to beat the shit out of you all the time, basically.
Let's get to the fight already.
Like, come on, man. But like, anyways, so, talking about Mikey, right? So Michelangelo, nicknamed Mikey, right, is the least disciplined, basically the dumbass, but he also is the most fun-loving turtle. So like, if you want to have a good time, man, this is the guy to party with. Yeah, this is the guy to do it with. So he's usually portrayed as the most agile and naturally gifted. So you say that, I say this only because he has there are some times where he just got a lot of dumb luck, man. There's just sometimes that he does something and it just fucking works in his favor.
He just has a free spirit, you know what I mean? Like,
right. The problem is his weakness is his inability to take training seriously, which, yes, that's true, because a lot of times he just like, man, I'm so hungry, man. Like, can I get a pizza?
I think he's the like atypical teenager.
Yes, he is the typical one.
If you were taking like all of 4 of these turtles and you were saying, oh, they're teenagers,
this is the one that would most represent that.
He is the stereotypical teenager.
Yeah, I mean, and the worst part is like literally, he's like, dude, I'm so hungry, man. Like, where can I get a pizza? And like he just talks like that, and he's always just like he's always food motivated. If you give him a pizza, I guarantee he'd finish his training like in 2 seconds.
I do find this funny that it actually mentions he speaks with a Southern California dialect.
Well, that's why That's why I thought it was funny when I said it like that, because he was like, "Yeah."
It's almost like, I mean, when you're talking Southern California, like you're talking more of like and not that he's SoCal, like not like he's like Cheech or Chong, like it's not quite that accent, but it's more of like the surfer.
That's why I was saying it the way I've been saying it, is because that's literally what they're trying to reference. What I find it interesting though is unless, again, I'm not saying they didn't have. I mean, I guess really back then they didn't really have a whole lot of internet, maybe access, especially being in a sewer. But what's interesting is that, again, these guys are based out of New York. So like, how would you? I mean, me personally, like, unless you're hearing somebody all the time, like, how would you develop that kind of accent if you're hearing a lot of New York accents most of the time? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it could just be for TV, but
I mean, it's easily TV. I never understood that, but yes. So as I also mentioned before, he expresses his love of pizza whenever brought up. And he wears an orange mask and fights with nunchucks. So he is probably the only one that literally could eat pizza for the rest of his life and have no issues with it. I'm not saying that the others don't, because I know we're going to talk about him, but Splinter hates pizza. Anytime like pizza's up, he's like, I want nothing to do with pizza. But Michelangelo's one of those dudes that, like he also like, he'll try like new creations. I think some of the episodes I remember watching, like he was like, "Hey, I got like a gumball Oreo, like, Skittles pizza. Like that sounds great, man." And he's just like having at it. And like, I think it's like anchovies, like some weird shit on it. And I'm just like, and he's the only one eating it at that point because Raphael, Leonardo and all them, they're just like, what the hell are you putting on? Like, they just like, give me a pepperoni pizza. I'm okay with this shit. He's just putting on random ass shit. But like with Michelangelo, though, with the nunchucks, what I find interesting is I feel like that for me is not also probably the most, I'm not saying it's the most difficult, but I feel like it's not also the most wise choice of weapons in the ninja's arsenal in a sense. I'm not saying you can't use it correctly, but like katanas, sais, maybe a bow staff, like that seems more practical. Nunchucks, I mean, because like he can throw them, that's great, but like you have to have some accuracy with that shit, and it needs to be all kinds of things that I just don't know.
I mean, obviously, nunchucks, if you use them the right way, and you're trained to use them the right way, they can obviously be a pretty formidable weapon. But yes, they're not quite the same as being like sais. I mean, obviously, Raphael's sais. I think and this is all training. I mean,
oh yeah,
you can. I mean, look at was it Electra?
Oh yeah, no. Yeah.
I mean, you can be trained to use them pretty effectively, but like they're, like nunchucks, they're very much a close-up weapon. Like you're not throwing them like, at least with like a katana, like you have some distance where you can
do something with it.
You can do something with it, but like size and obviously like the nunchucks, like they're all technique.
I mean, I will say one more last thing about Mikey before I go into Raphael is that Mikey, for some weird reason, every time he uses the nunchucks, I feel like there was one time where he actually used them as like helicopter, like he was flying through the air. And yeah. I was like, something stupid. And I'm like, how is this even working in gravity? Because you'd have to be spinning it really, really fast to even come close to be coming off the ground. But again, this is a TV show we're talking about. But then good old Raphael, and actually his nickname is just Raph. Right, so he's the most violent and temperamental of the turtles. So when I say he'll pick a fight with anybody, he'll fucking pick a fight with anybody. He doesn't care how big you are, none of that shit. He's like, I want to pick the biggest guy in the room, and I'm going to beat his ass real quick. Don't you worry. But he's also the most protective. I'm going to mention that. But like he's rebellious, he's cynical, he's quick-witted, and he's often driven by his own strong emotions. So yes, whenever basically somebody gets hurt or something else like happens within the group, he's the first one to say, let's kick some ass. Like, let's go, and we're going to take this fight to them. But he also possesses a very strong desire for independence and often displays animosity towards his brother Leonardo over his leadership and their conflicting methods. So technically, what's weird is like Leonardo and Raphael, they always have this like leadership struggle because Raph doesn't want to listen to Leonardo. But the thing is if he was more calm and like kind of like, hey, I have a leadership mentality, maybe he would do that. Now, I know sometimes, let's say if Leonardo, because I know in like some of the series and whatnot, like Leonardo sometimes has done like secret missions by himself and like, has left kind of Raph in charge a little bit, even though Donatello didn't really like pick up the leadership. Raph will take over. And I think sometimes like he does a good job, but I think like I said, with the emotions and like, that strong desire to be like, I want to like kick some ass. Like that's where he gets into trouble. And that's where he gets his, weakness from, where it's like he wants to prove to everybody that he can do well, but like it ultimately is going to hurt his brothers in the long run.
I mean, he also became the Night Watcher in the comic books, which was kind of like him just kind of going out and helping people so that like he just wasn't like with the rest of the turtles. Like he was just kind of going rogue.
Yeah, a lot of the times.
Just he would wear kind of this like, I mean, the picture that I'm looking at here is like, it's kind of like an all metal, like kind of medieval looking armor.
Yeah.
But he would basically just go out and help, be basically becoming a vigilante is basically like what he was. And then at one point I was actually reading that he actually put on the Shredder costume and became the Shredder to get to the foot, which is kind of interesting because that kind of tracks with who Raphael is.
No, I agree. I mean,
the rest of the turtles probably would have been like, no, we can't do that. Like, let's just go after them, or like, let's come up with a plan.
Yeah,
and Raph is like, no, fuck that. I'm going to put on this guy's armor, and I'm just going to go out there and pretend I'm him.
No, I mean, and so like kind of looking at this too is like, his quick temper tends to get the better of him, but he openly loves his brother's father and his allies. And again, he wears a red mask and uses a pair of sai. So the thing is about his quick temper. So like he what's funny is he plays a tough guy, but when his brothers are against Splinter or even like Casey Jones and all of them, like if they get injured, like he's the first one to say, hey, like he loves them with dearly, but the thing is he plays the tough guy role because he doesn't want to show his emotions.
Right. And, with Leonardo, like a lot of times Leonardo will come up with like, no, we're not doing this. We need to come up with a plan. And Raphael at the same time will be like, no, fuck this. I'm going. You can either stay here or follow me, but I'm going and doing this, even though like Leonardo basically was like, no, we need to come up with a better plan because we're going to get slaughtered. And Raphael's like, no, I'm grabbing my sides and I'm going, motherfucker.
Well, so the problem, and the only other person that could really stop him was Splinter.
Right.
If Splinter said something, he's going to be like...
He had a lot of respect for Splinter, I think.
That was the thing.
That's the thing. I mean, it's not... with Splinter, it wasn't just love. I mean, he did look at Splinter as like a father. And, the rest of the Turtles were his brothers, and that's kind of like they were family. But there was more, I think, there wasn't as much respect for Leonardo as a leader as there was for Splinter as like his sensei and father. Sensei, yes, but more so as a father.
I would say a father figure really is the best way to put it. Because, I mean, I know that he adopted them. I get what you're saying, but like it's more of a father figure. It's more that like, hey, I'm mentoring you, and that's kind of what I would put that, kind of same title, like sensei, father figure, kind of in a way, because he knows, like, yeah, like, granted, yes, he couldn't have birthed, fucking four turtles, in a sewer, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot more respect there, and I mean, going into Splinter, I mean, obviously Splinter is a rat.
Hold on. He wasn't always a rat.
He wasn't always a rat, but he mutated into a rat and became the adoptive father of the Ninja Turtles. And they weren't Ninja Turtles when he found them. They were obviously just turtles. But he trained them into becoming ninjas, trained them in the art of ninjutsu. Obviously, he's very cautious and protective of them. He's constantly warning them of the dangers of going to the surface, where Michelangelo's always going to the damn surface and getting pizza or doing whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
Raphael's kind of doing the opposite, where he's not just getting pizza and fucking around. Like, Raphael's going up there and being a vigilante half the time because he's not agreeing with, like, training. Like, he's a man of act. Like, he's a turtle of action.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to just, like... We already know this shit. Like, let's just do it. But he's constantly warning them of how dangerous the surface can be, and obviously hiding your true like identities and not making people see you, which is kind of the art of being a ninja. Is going in, doing what you need to do, and getting out without being seen.
So what's interesting about Splinter for me is that it's kind of like if you took like Mr. Miyagi. And like took like Mr. Miyagi, maybe like a Jackie Chan, kind of like I would say mix of two, and then maybe just have like a quieter tone. That it's kind of like that because like wise words, like he was just, it's that typical like way of how he says certain things. And, honestly, like, yeah, I'd be like, shit, man, I'd rather you teach me goddamn jujitsu. Like, this would be great, man. Come on. Like, I don't even care about your appearance. Now, the one thing I mentioned earlier about the fact that he wasn't a rat. So it depends on which way you look at it. Cause I know there's different ways. I think different series have portrayed this. Yes, technically he was a rat, and that he did, touch the ooze, and then he became basically kind of like this humanoid rat looking whatever, but like basically had like human features, but not, I don't know. It's kind of weird. But there was also an episode I do remember that he does turn into a human because he like they use a ray to basically like turn him into a human for like a short amount of time, but like makes it go back to like.
Well, I think he was a human though, wasn't he? Like,
because if I'm not mistaken, I think in some series like. It was like, I think part of one of the newer series, I think he actually was a rat that was like underneath his mentor or his sensei.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah,
he then was like
he was
that.
he was already a rat, but he was watching.
Like one of those.
He was watching, like at least in the movie, and I get I get this from the movie, and I don't know how comic accurate the movie is compared.
Yeah,
and this is the original movie, not like any of the
I know what
ones,
you mean.
But yeah, he was actually a rat, but he would. It's funny, like in the movie, and you can only really do this in the '90s, guys.
Of course.
Like, you have this like rat, and he's an actual rat. Like he's not mutant, he's not anything, but like he's doing like the little punches and the little kicks in the cage. But he's watching like his master, which is like this huge sensei guy.
Yeah.
And
in Japan.
In Japan, and he's like, he's looking at the moves, and like, you can actually see this like rat, and he's like
yes, I do remember that.
He's doing the punches, he's doing the punches and the kicks, and this is where Splinter comes in and kills them, and he ends up in the sewer, which is where the ooze ends up, and he ends up in that same ooze with these 4 turtles, and because of him spending so many years watching his like master training and doing everything that he's been doing, I mean, I don't think that automatically makes
that doesn't make
that doesn't automatically make you a ninja, but I mean,
at least a master at it. But yeah,
for him, obviously it did. But I mean, he was able to train the turtles into becoming these ninja masters. And
so like I said, I think in the series there's different versions of it, but like I think in like that where like the newer series and the movies, like they show him as a rat, like, and then doing that. But I think that's always been the case. I don't think it ever like he ever really was a human. There was only I think in the older series, in the original animated series, they shot him with a ray because I think it was one of the what's his name? It's the brain. I'm trying to Krang. No, Krang.
Who's I think it's Krang. Yeah,
Krang. Like he creates some device that basically like turns the mutants in a sense like back to their normal selves, and I think they are basically turns into like a different version. So like he makes him turn into a human. But it's weird because, like I said, it's kind of weird how they do it different versions. I think they should have just kept it the same. But I'm pretty sure that he was always a rat and then became that like. Walking rat with basically a stick, basically like an old sensei in a sense. So like, that's why I said it's weird. I don't know the original story of like how that would have been, but I would assume it's probably that, not the other way.
Yeah. I think to me, I think one of the most annoying characters is April O'Neil. That's just me. Okay. I think she's one of the most annoying. But
I agree with you, but I think the thing with her is that it depends on which version you're talking about. Because like, and I'm going to say it like this. So like, if you're talking about the animated series, like the original animated series, yeah, she's kind of annoying. Doesn't really have a whole lot besides being a reporter, right? Like in her
well, and that's the thing. Like she's constantly like, she's confident, courageous, like intelligent. She's kind of like the human kind of, I guess you can call her maybe a companion. She's more of like, I guess, a sidekick if you almost want to call her that. But like,
she's got connections and stuff. But I think she's really more of like down the road. I mean, we'll talk about him, but more of a love interest for somebody else.
Yeah, and she met the turtles when they saved her from a squadron of mousers chasing her down into the sewers. That had to be either the series or the comic book. I mean, the movie was a little bit different because I think she was being pursued by the Foot or something. But
I want to say, well, the Mousers were the little.
Those were like the
chopping, like dinosaur looking things. Yeah.
Yes. But that's where she initially met the turtles. But the thing with April O'Neil is like she is the atypical like news reporter who is always like another one in DC would be Lois Lane.
Yeah, that's kind of similar.
It's very, very similar where like she goes after a story, she gets herself in trouble, and then the turtles come along and they help said person.
Right.
That is basically April O'Neil in a nutshell. I mean, obviously she helps them on many of their like adventures in the comic book. She aids them in the work that they do. She's out in the public where the turtles, obviously they can't operate in the public, so she's there. But they're always like sneaking into her apartment. I mean, I know in the animated show, like they're always going into her apartment and eating pizza.
I told you, man, like their favorite food is pizza. Like it's plain and simple there.
But yeah, I mean, I do like, you know, the original kind of concept of April O'Neil. I don't like per se how they've kind of shifted from like the comic book and the animated versions to like the newer movies.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know, I don't like how they portray her in the newer movies, and I think there's a newer series that's either coming out or it's out now where they made April O'Neil a black woman.
I believe it was the movie. That's what I thought you were about to mention. But yeah, the movie, that's what they did. And
not that I'm opposed to that, but it's weird to me that you would all of a sudden make you would change the character all of a sudden, like the character is established.
Well, Matt, I mean, we've talked about how characters all of a sudden change, you know, color or different appearances.
I mean, I'm not going to say anything about it, like in particular, but like I think it's just weird. Like you would take a character that's been established for so long, I mean, like since '83.
Okay, hold on. So should I mention Velma?
Well,
but that's been since the 60s.
We all know Velma. The newer show is a failure. I don't know how it got a season 2, but
listen, I'm just going to say it. We're talking about a show that was back in the 60s, and then we decided, hey, we're going to go solo with this chick. I'm just saying it's the same concept in a sense where you're. I mean,
if you want a hot time, just watch there's an episode of Velma where there's a shower scene full of naked cartoon women. Have your go at it, John.
I haven't watched it, so clearly I haven't.
I only think I saw one episode, and I was like, "What the fuck is this bullshit? This is stupid."
No, but yeah,
Casey Jones. I think he's one of my favorites.
He's that like typical New Yorker. Like, but it's different about him is like he's basically the human version of Raph.
He is, and he's you know, he's got like not the traditional like Jason style hockey mask, but he's got a very different like hockey mask. But he wears that, but he carries like I think in the comic book he might have a full size.
I'm pretty sure it's a full size hockey stick.
But I think in the movie it was a shorter one.
Oh, maybe. I didn't realize there was a difference between the shortness of it.
But yes, like he is a close ally to the Turtles. I think he actually initially was not an ally. Like they were actually fighting against him.
Yeah. They were.
But then he ends up becoming an ally. And then, you know, obviously he's a lot like Raph, where him and Raph actually go off on a lot of different
solo missions
by themselves, just kind of like going after people. He is more so like beat him up, you know.
He's basically, it's more like take names, ask questions later, like fucking let's kick some ass kind of a deal. And so like I mentioned about before, so yes, Casey Jones does down the road actually fall in love with Miss April O'Neil. And they do have a romantic relationship.
Which I think makes, is it Michelangelo or is it Raphael, like kind of jealous? I know one of them at least gets a little jealous.
I thought the only one that really had like romantic feelings, I thought was like, I don't know if it was Leo or if it was like, I don't think it was Donnie. I think one of them had I
want to say Michelangelo because Michelangelo was always kind of like.
Well, it was either him or I honestly thought it was Leo at first.
You know I wouldn't say Leo because Leo is more into like the regiment. Like he is very like your regimented leader, like man. If you've ever had a manager that micromanaged you, no, you're right. That's Leonardo. So
maybe it was Mike, or maybe it could have been
I want
Raph.
to say it's probably Michelangelo, but it could have been Raph too. Who knows?
I don't know.
Shredder, he's one of the big bads.
Well, hold on. So the original fun little fact: the original voice of Shredder in the animated series was who, Matt? Please tell me you know. Oh, come on, you're telling me you don't know who the original voice is. Please, I can tell you right now.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay,
but my brain's like mush right now anyway. Okay, so it's fine.
So the original voice was Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, James Avery. If you didn't already know that,
Uncle Phil.
Yeah. So Uncle Phil, if you haven't watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. James Avery, the guy who plays...
If you haven't watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you've been living on a rock. You need to stop listening to our podcast.
Hey, get the hell over there and start watching it, man. It was also one of the saddest shows of all time. Sorry. No, but like seriously, no, it was original voice. I thought he was... It just... You never noticed it, but like you could tell, but it was just... it was so iconic, and I know that technically, in the movies and stuff, they clearly did not have the same person doing it all the time, but like,
right. Yeah. There were different people. But I think the creation of the character is really funny because Kevin Eastman got the idea for Shredder's armor from large, like the old,
yes, the old cheese grater,
the old cheese graters, like the trapezoid, kind of like the square-ish.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Cheese graters, and he had seen them, in which he obviously like looked at them and was like, "Hey, could you imagine a character with weapons on his arms like this?" and then Peter was like, "Hey, how about the Shredder? We call him the
Shredder
because we call him the Shredder
because we like to shred things." Yeah,
but it's so funny. Like you're looking at a cheese grater and be like, "Hey, could you imagine like those things on somebody's arm? Hey, why don't we call him the Shredder?" It's just so stupid. It's funny, like, and that's exactly kind of what they did because, like, in the comic books, like, he had these like really weird like claw things that were coming out of his like, even on like the shoulders, like he had these like, very much like he would shred anything that came into like.
So, I think with him though, it was like don't get me wrong. He was a smart guy. I know he was very strategic in a sense, and it was kind of weird because technically, I know in the animated series, in the original, like he was of course a human and everything else, but in a later series, in the series that I was talking about earlier, like 2003, he actually was an alien that came from outer space and was actually embodied in his body. It was like 500, it was like 500 or 1,000 years ago, whatever, but he was just inside of his body. Or like he made his own like body or whatever, as like a Foot Clan, and made his own clan or whatever, and then came to New York and established his power and all this other shit. But he was actually some part of alien species or whatever.
That's
in this
so
new
weird.
Series. But I'm just telling you, like that's what they did in the newer series, and I was like, well, this is kind of fucking weird. So he's a fucking alien looking creature.
I mean, I very much liked the idea that he was also kind of like this like, I don't know if he was like a fellow sensei or like a student. I think of like the master that was
there. I think
that owned Shredder, which was like the pet rat.
Right, I think it was. I think that was the same master that they had together, and I think with Shredder because he wanted originally he had another guy we're going to mention here shortly is Baxter Stockman create this ooze to like transform basically animals into like humanoid looking beast or whatever.
And at one point he actually does become a super Shredder.
Yes. And yeah,
which is kind of like a much bigger kind of like version of him. One character I've never heard of is Karai.
I have, and only because I believe he's in actually the newer series that I remember watching it.
Is it not a she?
I
think it's a she because the pictures that I saw was a she. But
so I think. Oh wait a minute. So I think Karai.
Because she was a high-ranking member of the Foot Clan, and she was the second in command.
So,
but she, I think, at different points, like she was both like an ally at one point, and then obviously an enemy.
So
most of the time,
I think this is where I can remember from the newer series, like I was talking about that 2003 kind of, not so much like the later on series and whatnot. She was basically kind of like his adopted daughter in a weird way.
Yeah.
And basically at some point, because this is where I told you about the whole alien thing, is that he leaves because he gets basically sent back to his planet or whatever the hell he came from, and she takes over the Foot Clan. So like she kind of like takes over for him, and she actually becomes the Shredder in a sense. And it's kind of weird. Honestly, I feel like you really should watch that 2003 version of it because it's a little weird, but honestly, it's interesting to see what the differences are, like in the I'm saying the old versus the new kind of a deal.
Yeah,
it's just weird.
It's really weird. Like when it's like some of the other 80s kind of cartoons that we watched, where there's like I think Transformers was the one that we talked about, where there's so many variations of the show.
Oh yeah,
where the story kind of gets like
misconstrued.
It gets changed here, and then it gets changed there, and then it gets changed there, and then sooner or later you're like, Okay, well, what is the real fucking story?
And where did this actually come from?
Yeah.
Like, why are we changing this all of a sudden? No, but like,
These two are kind of like my favorite henchmen, I think, of the Shredder.
honestly, no, I'm just gonna say it. These two, when it comes to henchmen, I think of all time, at least I would say in the top 10 of henchmen of all time.
And the movie did them obviously. I love them in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, they were awesome in this movie.
Absolutely. But I was gonna say of all time, I would say these are the two dumbest motherfucking morons of all time. And I only say this because yes, they were actually humans that became these creatures. Basically, one was a warthog or pig, I guess.
Yeah, there's a warthog.
Warthog, and then the other one was a rhino. But actually, it's Bebop, who was a warthog, and Rocksteady, who was the rhino. But they were both morons, man. They
were just like gung ho, like weirdos. But what's interesting is like they're named at, their names are based on styles of music. So bebop is, I don't know if you know what bebop is, but it's a style of jazz. And then rocksteady is a style of Jamaican music.
See, I know bebop was jazz, but like the rocksteady for the Jamaican style, I had no idea that was actually a style of music. But that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's a style of Jamaican music. But yeah, they were kind of this like duo, and they weren't smart, but they were tough. I mean,
they
Rocksteady would have this like charge, and then obviously Warthog, I think, also had kind of a charge that they would both
do at the same time.
But they were, I mean, as much as they didn't have much brains, they were very, very strong. Like
they had a lot of brawn. Brilliant, simple. They were just really strong, and they were to the point where like the first people you wanted to take out first was those two. Before Shredder, because you take out those two, then you can work on Shredder together.
But they were created primarily because they wanted to put more mutants into the animated series. So that's why Bebop and Rocksteady were created, was because they're you had Shredder, you had the Foot, you had April O'Neil, you had Casey, but the only real mutants were the four turtles and Splinter. Splinter. So Bebop and Rocksteady were kind of created to provide more mutants within the series, and that's the only reason really where they were created.
So I will say, when you said like how good they were in the movies, are we talking the 90s or are we talking the newer stuff?
No, the newer stuff.
I will say the people that played them at first, like when you saw that, so it was Seamus was one of them.
Yes.
And then the other one was, I can't remember that black guy's name. I cannot for the life of me remember who the hell, he's a comedian, but like, I thought it was weird at first when they had that weird hair, like at least the black guy, like he had that weird shit, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, and he just transforms into the fucking, I'm pretty sure he was Rocksteady, and Bebop was Seamus, but like, it was interesting how they did all that, and that was fine, but it was like, I don't know. I mean, again, we're talking about CGI and doing all this weird shit, but like,
I just think like the personalities of the two guys that they had, with Seamus and the other guy, like, their personalities like transferred over into who like Bebop and Rocksteady were.
Yeah.
And, for what they did in the movie, like it worked for those two characters. Cause you're like, they are kind of dumb. They are kind of, they are kind of ignorant, but they're very, very strong characters.
At least you didn't say that the person who plays April O'Neil was the best choice they could have chose, because it was funny when they chose her.
She's not the best choice, but she's hot as shit.
Okay, hold on.
Why they chose her?
Hold on a second. We're going to try this again. The fact that she didn't want to get known as this franchise girl because of being in Transformers. We're talking about Megan Fox, folks, who didn't want to be known as the Transformers girl. Now wants to be in another series that is basically, she's known as April O'Neil, so now she's a Teenage Mutant Ninjas girl. Now, I get where they're coming from, but at the same time...
she's typecast into the hot girl.
I know.
That is why she was April O'Neil. Not because she's a great actress.
Hold on. Do you know why they ever, like, where she really got her fame from? Like, do you remember the movie? Because I can remember one movie that she really, like, that reason why she became that hot girl, whatever. Do you remember what movie?
I don't know what movie.
It was Jennifer's Body. If you ever saw it. That was the movie that...
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Okay, well, that was one movie that like really prominent her friggin' fame to another level.
But I mean, obviously you can tell when you're watching Transformers, and you can see like, especially the scene where she's looking under the hood.
Yeah, I know. And the whole steam comes out, and it's like...
And he's looking at her, and the steam comes out, and her hair's going, and she's all sweaty, and he goes back in the car, and he's biting his knuckle. He's like...
He's like, what are you doing, you weirdo?
Like it's that scene. It's like you're watching it and you're like, dude, she is so hot. Like in that one scene, like she is so hot. But like, I think you look at Megan Fox and you see like her personality in real life, and you're like, fuck no, man, I ain't going there.
I was going to say two things. Hopefully, our wives aren't listening to this at this point.
Hey,
and
like you can be like the most best looking girl or woman on the planet, but for me, if your personality is a pain in the ass, I want nothing to do with you. I don't care how hot you are.
I agree with you. And also, real quick, do you know who she's married to? Or at least I think in a relationship. I don't know if you ever know who Machine Gun Kelly is.
Oh, I do. I don't
so
like that guy.
my point is that's the weird relationship that they have.
And
I know it's a weird relationship. Yeah. I know. But anyways, the next guy, Baxter Stockman. Okay, so this guy, he just does this is the weird part. So I know in the series, or at least in the original series, he was a white dude actually in the original series, and I know like he was like. He's kind of like his little henchman, like for like Shredder. Like he would kind of like task him out to do other shit and like kind of do some weird shit.
Yeah.
But like it was weird.
He created the Mousers.
Yes, he created the Mousers. He created basically the ooze. He, was kind of like a little henchman to Shredder and whatnot. But here's the weird part. This is why I'm only going to mention this newer series I've been talking about. Is so of course he's black actually in the 2003 version. I don't care. That's not a big deal. But he becomes, it's kind of weird in this situation.
So like fucking Tyler Perry?
Who?
Is that who Baxter Stockman is in the
2003 version?
No, not in the series, in the movie.
Oh, in the new movies you're talking about?
Yeah.
Maybe. I think that's what it is. He so what's weird is like in the series is like he creates the Mousers, he does all this, but like every time, and I'll say this, every time that he screws up or like something fails or whatever, what Shredder does is he basically like he almost dismantles him. Like again, he's a human, so like he starts like tearing him apart. And I'm not kidding. You'll have to see what I'm talking about. He gets to the point where it's so bad that he basically is just a floating, I kid you not, brain with a bunch of like, I guess like a spinal cord and like a few other things, and he basically just floats in this tank. And then he becomes this like android, humanoid. It's fucking weird, man. That's why I said if you ever see that series, I need you to watch it, because literally I'm like, it's just hard to describe because you'd have to see what I'm talking about. But like he just basically he goes from being a human to basically being like a fucking brain, and then it becomes in this like, and that's all he does. And it's like, but Shredder like literally takes him apart, like he shreds him apart literally, and just like creates like he's like a floating brain in a tank. And it's just weird. It's fucking weird to me. Like,
so in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah. It's Giancarlo Esposito.
Really?
Esposito. That at least does the voice.
Well, if you... But
Tyler Perry is the one that's in the Out of Shadows.
In the movies.
In the movie.
In the real version, I guess.
And I don't know, I mean, what I'm looking at on as far as Google, Scott A. Williams, which is he looks like a white dude, and then K. Todd Freeman, both at least provided a voice for Baxter Stockman.
That's probably back in the day. Yeah, I think the first one was probably back in the early ones. That next one might have been for later, but this is the one that I need you to kind of explain a little bit. This whole first female Ninja Turtle thing.
So there actually are two newer turtles that were introduced. This very first one she was introduced kind of as the first female Ninja Turtle in the next mutation. That was one of the series. So unlike the four main turtles, like she wasn't trained in ninjutsu. She kind of utilized like shamanistic magic and manipulated orbs to fight. She dons an aqua-colored bandana. And then within the continuity of the series, when Splinter rescued the turtles, he accidentally left Venus behind. She made her way to Chinatown and was found and raised as a daughter by a shinobi magician who named her Mai Pei Chi. So That's kind of like the original creation of and her name was Venus de Malo.
De Malo.
The new version of Venus was released by IDW Comics Continuity, and it's very weird. This one is like, I guess the incarnation of this. The character is more Frankenstein-like with telepathic abilities.
Fucking weird.
Created by a mad mutant surgeon named Dr. Jasper Barlow from the remains of a female punk frog named Bonnie.
What kind of shit are they on at this point?
You know what? You can make this shit up because obviously they did, but it's weird. Yeah.
This shit is weird.
I think, creating this character, obviously, like they kind of like left her behind, which is kind of weird. But the second character here is Jenica. She's nicknamed Jenny, and she is the second female turtle introduced after Venus de Milo. She, again, was created for the IDW comic series. She wears a yellow mask, and her weapon choices are Teko Kagi claws, which are very similar to Wolverine claws, basically. She was initially a human Foot Clan member, and then after being defeated in an assassination attempt on Splinter, she was put under the tutelage of Leonardo and began to warm up to her new family, which were the Turtles, obviously. After being stabbed by Karai, that's where she comes in, Jenica was given a blood transfusion from Leonardo.
This is where it gets interesting.
So
that reminds me of the whole Miss Marvel thing here, but
yeah. So the mutagen and the turtle DNA in Leo's blood bonded with Jenica and mutated her into a mutant turtle. So, despite her loyalty to the team due to her near-death experience, Jenica still has unresolved anger issues towards Karai.
Sounds like Jenica could basically become the new Raphael in that sense.
Very, very possible. But yeah, she was initially a human, and then obviously became a turtle. And I don't know if she's still in the main part of the comics. It's kind of sounds like it, but yeah, I know that they were trying to introduce newer turtles to the series, which is weird because I think you have such like the classic of the 4 plus Splinter and then Shredder and then the Foot Clan.
Yeah,
that, like you really have to create like a really good story.
Or like a follow-up, or maybe like a later on story or something like that. Like,
yeah, you really have to create like a really good story of like the creation and why this character should be added.
Or, right, I mean, maybe...
Because obviously Venus de Milo was a fucking weird-ass story, and that's why probably she's probably big. Not in the continuity anymore, but, Jenica, I could see...
Now, yes, I could see a story on that, yes.
As long as they continue to develop the character, I think there could be enough where you could say, okay, now there's 5 turtles.
Or, right, I mean, or you could say that, because I know technically the only one that, I know there's a series down the road that it was a little while ago that they had, it was just like the lone, it was like a samurai one or whatever. I think it was just Leonardo was the only survivor, or one of them. I don't remember who it was exactly who survived. It was either Leo or Raphael. But like having something like that where in the comics wise, like you could do something like that and be like, hey, listen, like now you're the legacy of the turtles, or you can say, hey, now you're a solo turtle, but here you are, you have to kind of give a backstory, do all that fun stuff. I mean, that's the only thing I could see. Like not maybe continue with the turtles, but like maybe have her own kind of like journey, or her own little adventures or whatever. But
yeah, so we are a little bit past an hour.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
All right, so
we're good. We're trucking along here.
We'll go through the series real quick and the films and some of the video games. I mean, a lot of the video games are kind of weird and
they're
same.
Consistent, but
then the same, yeah. But the series kind of like, they go like this. Okay, so you have the original series, which was 86 to 96.
Which that is the one that I thought, and this is where I told Matt before, I really thought there was a movie version of the original animated series. Apparently there wasn't, which I was very surprised. I thought there was because I remember seeing it, but then maybe this is the whole Mandela effect. I don't know.
So, the next mutation, which is the one kind of right after this, it was only 1 year. It was 97 to 98. But I think the one that you might be talking about is the 2003, because the 2003 to 2009 had a 2009 television film that was a 4-part finale to the series. And in the movie, or the film rather, the Turtles kind of encounter their 1987 animated counterparts who have been accidentally transported to 2003. And the 80s Shredder and Krang, as well as like Bebop and Rocksteady, are kind of like all there. So it's kind of like an epic, continuation of like, what happened in the 80s and these new versions of them.
So I will say, I'm just going to say this real quick, because I'm honestly going to tell you right now, the others I really could give two shits about, because those are just kind of the newer versions of what the Turtles are. I'm telling you right now, I would say if you ever have a chance, really just watch these two. Watch the original 1986 to 96, and then I'm telling you, I know it sounds weird, but watch the 2003 to the 2009, because that to me is as close as you're going to get to like that same kind of feeling of the original Turtles. Everything else moving forward.
Most of these are like really, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the one in 2012, and there's a newer one coming to Paramount Plus. They're very much kid.
Very kid.
Very kid.
If you're talking more adult, if you're talking more like it's staying true to the comics.
It's the difference of Teen Titans to Teen Titans Go.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I would say Teen Titans. So if we're going to talk about Teen Titans for just 2 seconds, I would say that would be as close to this 2003, like that same style of version of what I could say, like that's a better version than trying to watch these like newer ones, which is like the Teen Titans Go. Like it's not worth our time if we're going to talk about it.
All right, so let's get into films, because maybe not so much of Ninja Turtles 3, because that one was kind of...
It was a weird one.
It was a weird one, but you have the original trilogy of movies, which was, Turtles, Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, and then Turtles 3, which was 90, 91, and 93.
Which one was the one they go back in time?
I want to say 2.
Was it that one where they go back in time with this like the Japanese samurai?
Yeah, I think it's 2.
Okay. That was one of my favorite ones. Honestly, that was the one I think
it's 2. Then you have 2007, which was with, it's an animated film. That one's Chris Evans, Sarah Michelle Gellar. I don't know.
Gellar, yeah.
Kevin Smith, Patrick Stewart.
That's a fucking weird cast already.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make any sense to me to have those people.
Obviously, Chris Evans and
Patrick Stewart, for God's sake.
SMG is probably your best. But and then you have your Michael Bay.
This was okay. These two movies were
kind of like movie and sequel. The way that they did the Turtles, they look weird.
They do look weird.
But I dig the way that Michael Bay did it.
To a degree.
It might not be the greatest movies, but I do like how they did it. But Mutant Mayhem, which is kind of their newer animated film.
This was with like Jackie Chan, Seth Rogen. I think Ice Cube was in it too, and a few other people. But like, this is definitely more a kids movie than anything. This is just kind of like seeing them as like a really younger teenage kind of a deal. This one, it was okay. Like I wasn't saying it's like the absolute greatest of all time, but I would say it has a modern twist on certain things that I was like, okay, you know what? I can see you doing this and like, portraying it this way. But honestly, like, yeah, if you're just talking the films, I would go back old school all day long.
Oh yeah, old school.
When you see like literally Vanilla Ice, doing a song and rapping and all that shit, and Ninja, go! Like that's classic to me, man. Like that's just
shit. Video games. Let's get into video games real quick, because arcade / NES, like they had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 1990. This was like the first video game, which was you can switch between any of the 4 characters at any time. You had kind of overhead areas, but the game was mainly side-scrolling.
Which basically, I was just going to say it. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 individual games we're going to talk about real quick is They're pretty much roughly the same, and this is doesn't.
They are roughly the same game, yeah. So in that one came out in 1990. So in 92, basically it was the kind of the same game. It just kind of they repurposed it, and I don't even know if they really updated it.
They probably changed the story, maybe some characters.
Yeah,
whatever,
but that one's Turtles in Time. That one is probably the more popular of the games because if you've ever been to an arcade in the 90s, you would know Turtles in Time because that was, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990, and they revamped it into Turtles in Time. It basically was almost the same game. So Shredder's Revenge, we've played that one.
That's the one that this is where the Cowabunga collection, whatever. Like those two are basically the same thing. It's literally just
the Cowabunga is a little bit different, but the Shredder's Revenge, we've played that. It's the same kind of side-scrolling thing. It's definitely different than
it's more updated.
The Turtles in Time. It's much more updated. It's more multiplayer friendly.
The Cowabunga collection is basically take all the other games we just mentioned and a few others
and you're putting them all together. Yes. And then the very last piece of this is they do make an appearance in Injustice 2.
Which I do remember playing Injustice 2 and all that stuff. I mean, basically, it's the same company that does Mortal Kombat. It's NetherRealm Studios and stuff. They did a great job. I think what they do, a lot of times what these companies do, especially in NetherRealms, is like they'll do it with the Mortal Kombat especially, is that they'll just take random fucking characters and they're like, oh, let's take Spawn, or hey, let's take fucking Jason, or name a character. I guarantee you they've done it, but like these guys, they were like, hey, we're going to do an Injustice, and they did. I think it was you could play as all of them, but the thing is that every time that you load into the screen, it would just pick a random character for you of one of the turtles. So it wasn't just like you were playing as Leo all the time.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, you can play as Leo, you can play as Raph, you can play as Donnie, you can play as, Mikey. And I think there was a way to switch them. I don't know that way, but like, yeah, they made an appearance. I mean, I think visually speaking, I think they did an okay job, kind of showing them in a video game sense like that. I'm just going to say this real quick. I told Matt, I'm like, if this was me, and especially nowadays, especially with engines and like what they've done with Batman and they've done all that shit, like I think personally they could do something very similar to like Batman in that sense, that same style.
If you're talking Arkham, yes.
Yes, I'm talking that, and like do it with them and making it open world in that sense and doing it that way. Maybe not exactly like that, but like get it as close as you can, but making it open world so you can be the characters, because they technically did it recently with I can't even remember the goddamn game now. I think it was the Arkham Knights. That's what it was. I know you haven't played the game. I get it.
Well, I think there's a difference between Ninja Turtles, which might not have as much of a need for that kind of a game.
Well, I mean, you can,
as opposed to Batman, which obviously has a call for that game.
No, but I think you could do that with an open
You're looking
world concept.
At a lot of the media that they're creating now for the Turtles, where it's very, very kid friendly. Kids aren't going to necessarily play that game unless you start putting them in Call of Duty.
Well, or Fortnite or
Fortnite or
Valorant or whatever, name the game. But no, I agree. But I think for
would it be cool?
Classic,
yes,
absolutely. I think
would it be awesome? Yes. Is it plausible? No, it's not, because I don't think that there's a need. There's a call for that.
We're going to try this again. I think Matt's. I understand what he's saying, but at the same time, I think if you just got enough people to do it, I think maybe they'd even look at considering it. I think you could still do it. I think you could make a game out of it. And you know what? Fuck it. I'll make a petition. I don't give a fuck. I'll go talk to somebody.
You can do what you want, but I just don't. I mean, there's.
I just think that
there might not be a huge call for it as far as like where they've already done it with Batman. Like,
I understand that, but the thing is like
you're gonna
make something different.
Some random ass guy fuck this whole thing up. And
listen, if you could take that same style of game,
I get where you're going.
I'm just saying,
I get where you're going.
You can fucking do the same thing and make it 4 players and make it co-op. I'm just saying, there's all.
But as far as Injustice 2, so in the character ending, the Turtles explain that they wound up in the DC universe after Krang and Shredder attempted to send them to Dimension X. After defeating Brainiac, the Turtles celebrated with a this is in quotations,
super
salty pizza courtesy of Harley Quinn, which actually contains the edible nanotechnology 5U93R, which is, that's in the DC universe, and we'll talk about that maybe another day. But it augments the turtles to Kryptonian levels of strength and durability, allowing them to easily defeat Krang and Shredder upon their return to their dimension. That's like their official ending story.
Well, yeah, just like in basically Mortal Kombat or even Injustice and Begin, NetherRealms, they've done this is like, yeah, when they take a character, you can do like their like storyline and then be like, hey, this is what happens and this is how they get back and do all this random shit. Anyways, guys, we've been talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These guys, honestly, they're one of my, I'm not going to say like their all-time favorite, but I would say they're definitely one of my favorites.
They're very iconic because they're different. You know what I mean? They're not like Superman or Batman or Captain America. Like they're fucking Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and they're just cool, man. I mean, honestly, I love it. I mean, shit, my son actually has a T-shirt, and I thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever. I was like, dude, I need to get myself a fucking T-shirt, man. I got to look like you now. No, but like, I think for me, it's like, these guys were really, they have a lot of potential. And I'm going to say this, like, especially with media now, like, I think these guys, if they've done it, they should have done it a long time ago, but like they could have made it dark. And also like, they can keep the kids shit, but I also think they could also make things for adults, especially like, with certain series or certain whatever. But it just sucks that, these guys, yes, in the beginning they were kind of dark, man. They were, like in some ways, not all of it. I mean, there were some kid things or friendly things like that, but like, I think personally, yeah, I think it can kind of go both ways. You can make it dark and you can make it technically kid friendly, and I think that's what they were trying to do with the series like this, where, you've looked at other shit, Matt. It's like, it either goes one way or the other. Like these guys are kind of that middle ground in some weird way that you could technically go either way. Like you could make it dark or you could make it really kid friendly. And I think that's kind of rare where you don't see that as where, it's either got to be one way or the fucking other. It's like...
Yeah, and you can do, obviously with Turtles, you can do a whole lot with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can make a world out of it. That's the piece that I think they've never explored. And I think that's where I feel like it should be, something that could be explored at some point. But anyways, guys, we've been talking too much here. Again, like us, follow us, share it out to all your buddies and friends and all that fun stuff. But until next time, boys and girls,
stay geeky.